I remember looking at that baby, and I try to always distance myself from what I'm dealing with. But that was one day that was very particularly, it was hard for me to do that.
I do not know you, but I am your brother.
You do not know me, but I am your protector.
I will run into a burning building to save your life.
Though I do not know your name, I will take a bullet for you.
Though we've never met,
I believe in duty and sacrifice
of self.
Your family is my family.
Is my family. Your life is my duty.
What's going on, guys? Time for another episode of Behind the Uniforms. First, I want to apologize if you hear banging and screaming. They're building our new production studio upstairs, so our bad on that. But if you've never seen the show before, the way that it works is this. We invite active and retired law enforcement, first responders, veterans. They come onto the show. They bring a bottle of whiskey for the whiskey wall. We share a cocktail. They tell you about a good day and about a bad day. We're going to do a little shameless plug here shortly. We also keep, again, if you've never seen this before, we keep a bottle of whiskey and an empty glass here at all times at the whiskey wall for the men and women who will never be able to join us and share their stories because they've paid the ultimate sacrifice. So without further ado, tell them who you are.
I'm Brian Christopher Shea, currently employed here in Connecticut as a police officer. I've also served in the military, and I served as a cop out west in Texas.
So Shea has nothing to do with the choice of Jameson by chance, does it?
There may be a little bit behind that, yeah.
So brought some Jameson for the whiskey wall. So first, cheers to you.
Absolutely.
Where do you want to start? Good day, bad day? America.
Yeah, America. I guess I'll start with the bad. My dad always said to eat your veggies first, right? And then you can look forward to the rest. So in honor of that kind of mentality, I'll talk about I don't know if it's my worst day, but it definitely was a life-changing day as a cop. Those that know me know I'm a little bit cocky or headstrong, as I like to put it.
Sure. I can relate to that.
Confident. And when I first came on the job out in Texas, in the Austin area, I was very much so that person. We worked 12-hour shifts, 6 p to 6 a in my unit. I was coming off a 12-hour shift, and it was about 5:30 in the morning, and a call came out for an unresponsive child. And I was still in kind of my rookie mode. I shot over there. I pretty much timed the entry with EMS, so we were both arriving on scene at the same time. Found a 6-month-old baby girl on the floor of the house, and we worked hard to resuscitate. It did not take. EMS did most of the work. And then I was shouldered with trying to stop the family from coming back in to see their dead child.
Jeez.
And it was pretty intense from the standpoint that you have a grieving mother, but you also have a crime scene that you have to protect at this point because we didn't know what the circumstances around the child's death were. And so as a rookie cop or a relatively new cop, coming off of 11 and a half hours of work and already exhausted, I will say it definitely challenged me physically and mentally, but what challenged me most was my now oldest daughter, who's a teenager, was 6 days difference in age between the dead child and her. So I remember looking at that baby, and I try to always distance myself from what I'm dealing with. But that was one day that was very particularly, it was hard for me to do that. And so I didn't sleep after work that day. And I remember driving to pick my daughter up from daycare, and I'm on the interstate in Texas, and I had to pull off to the road, side of the road, and I vomited. And it never happened since, and never happened before. And I kind of say maybe it was just due to overexhaustion or whatever, but it's never happened. And I just think I kind of took some of that with me. But the guys that knew me before that day and after that day said that from that day forward, I was a totally different cop in the sense that it leveled me out. I connected more with my Texas brothers and sisters after that moment. And I think it made me a better police officer because once you have one of those days, you can always temper the other stuff.
Sure.
And you have kind of a sounding board for that. So that was kind of my bad day realization kind of day.
Thanks, brother. Tell me about a good day.
So a good day was kind of tragic, but it also had a nice twist. So I was in an armed standoff in front of one of the departments I work for. And it was very tense couple minutes. It felt like forever, right? And the back and forth between the guy with the gun and myself, it probably wouldn't have been a great audio replay because there was a lot of desperate comments made on both parts to try. It was an attempted suicide by cop. A lot of other officers around, but for some reason he and I were engaged in the verbal kind of de-escalation of the situation. I will say I was prepared and I had taken the slack out of the trigger. And those that know me know that I have I don't hesitate. And I actually, before coming on the show today, I met with my sounding board, my number one when it comes to critical incidents. He's been in several himself, and whenever I have one, I reach out to him. He also was a trainer of mine back years ago, and one of the things he taught me was when you're in a desperate moment or you're in that confrontation and you're giving commands and you're not being received, before you make a move, if you can, if the situation dictates, try something else. Try saying something different than the stupid loop of just drop the gun. So I was ready to pull the trigger, and in that moment of chaos, I heard my friend's words, and I told him, take the finger off the trigger. And he had it pressed against his head and the finger on the trigger. And he still was saying, shoot me. He was giving the command, screaming at me to kill him. And his finger came off the trigger, and I knew right then at that specific moment that I won. Not maybe in the sense that I wasn't going to have to pull the trigger, but that he couldn't beat me if he tried to move.
Sure.
It ended where I was able to get him to put the gun down. I didn't kill him that day, which was a win. 2 years later, I ran into the same kid who suffers from some severe mental health disorders, and we met on an arrest where he was making some similar life choices, but he was a little lower on the threshold of where he was spiked. And we talked about that night, and he was very emotional, and he remembered it. He heard some different things that night. He was dealing with some stuff, and he was so thankful that I didn't kill him, and his mother was too when I saw her in the lobby that night. That I share that now, that story in the interview that I did with him, I share with other officers. Not that every solution or every situation like that is going to be resolved without force, but that at least we can see that maybe there's some other steps and some things we need to contemplate, even in those critical moments, that we can apply to the chaos.
That's awesome, man. That's a great lesson. I have to ask, why'd you leave Texas? I mean, like, you went from America to like the USSR here in Connecticut. What were you thinking?
Every day it's a challenge in my transition. So I was married out west. I got divorced while I was out there, life. And I had the daughter I referenced, she was young at the time. Her mom was was military at the time and was reassigned duty stations. So I made the decision then, a hard decision to make, because I truly fell in love with Texas. I've lived in about 14 different places since I was young. 2 years of which were in Saudi Arabia. I spent my middle school year, turned 13 in Saudi Arabia. So, but I say of all the places I probably connected best with, it was Texas.
Wow.
Absolutely loved it there. So I made the decision, though, as a father, to follow my daughter. So I left Texas and I moved to Georgia, and I taught school for 2 years.
Georgia's still America.
Georgia, yeah. So I was in the Augusta, Evans, Georgia area. Loved it there. Amazing group of people down there. Loved teaching. My daughter moved again because of a reassignment up this way to the West Point area. Could not get a job in the Northeast to save my life. And I ended up taking a school teaching job in Hartford, Connecticut, where I taught in Frog Hollow, Hartford for 3 years. Unique experience.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And then got rooted. Wife 2.0 came along, and my little one's here, and those that are raised in Connecticut can't seem to ever leave.
Yeah.
So now I am stuck. I've tried to make a break. 2 years ago, I was going to make a break out west.
Now, with that being said, Austin. So we were in there shooting wild boar out of a chopper in the middle of the night in Austin.
Yep.
Austin is like Seattle and LA made a baby.
Yes.
And it's Austin.
And then it grew, and
Yeah.
it became something that it's its own. It's a total. So I policed in a jurisdiction. So you have Travis County, which comprises most of Austin, and then it abuts up against Williamson County, which
Yep.
is where I wasn't a county guy. I was a city cop inside of Williamson, and Williamson County is old school Texas.
Yep.
And that was a fun place to police.
Sure.
I mean, legit good times, right? Like everything is changing in the world, right?
Right.
You know, but it was still some old school
It's awesome.
police shenanigans, right?
Awesome.
So I am so grateful for that experience. But yes, when I look back or looked at going back out west, I had actually looked at circling back but going to Austin. So it is a very different dynamic
Totally.
in Austin. I mean, keep Austin weird, right? That's one of their things. South by Southwest, all that stuff out there is huge.
Well, let's talk about your book.
Yeah,
and
sure.
by the way, I warned you about the noise. I'm sorry. Sorry
cool.
about all the banging. Hopefully
Gremlins.
we'll have I don't know. You might have to respond to a call out here soon. Book, The Camel's Back.
Yep.
Tell them. What's
Good.
it all about?
It's great.
The best. I haven't read
You're
it yet,
gonna
but
love
I'm
it.
going to go with it is because I've heard it is. What's the story?
So what I did is I tried to take the catalyst for this, the genesis of this story was actually 2001 when I was overseas with the Navy. And we did, I was part of Operation Southern Wash and I was in the Gulf. And we had an operation, I won't go into the details of it, but there was a high civilian casualty rate in the operation. And I thought, even then, before I didn't have any kids at the time, but I always thought, like, when children children, elderly, civilians, when they're casualties of whatever war or circumstance, right, it resonates and creates things. So I thought to myself, if that ever happened on American soil, like, or whatever, like, how would I react if my kid's school was destroyed and died? Like, what would be my response? And I know what my response would be, right? And I think as a parent, anyone that is watching this and as a parent would say, I would probably spend the rest of my life destroying the people that did this, or I'd just wallow in my own grief. One of the two. You're going to be on the extreme of one, right?
Right.
So I created without going into too much detail about but I created a terrorist in this book that is built from a true, like, tragedy. And so in a way it humanizes him. Like, you will not probably agree with his methods, and obviously as an American citizen, like, you're not going to probably, you'd be hard pressed to love him, but you will understand him.
Got it.
Which I don't think has been done properly before. I've seen enough movies, read enough books, and it's always a black and white, monster and a boogeyman at night, right? Like, but this is a very human bad guy.
Awesome.
And the good guys are flawed, and they come from a myriad of experience. And in particular, I talked a little bit about that good day.
Yeah.
In the prologue is a shooting, and some of that experience, although it's fictionalized, is drawn upon from real experience.
Awesome.
And so the feedback I've gotten so far from the book, from the military, some overseas right now, some former, some current law enforcement, past, present, right, has been that it reads real in that regard. But the best piece of, I think, what I've done in this book is I've made it readable and accessible to all walks of life. So
Awesome.
There is such a human undercurrent in this story. Like, one of the main characters in the book, he's dealing with his youngest being a non-communicative autistic child. So I have friends I taught in the school system, so I've had my own exposure, but I have a very close personal friend who has dealt with that, and I use them as a sounding board to make sure that
It's real.
That reads real. And
Right.
so writers use, they call it beta testing. They send their book out. Hey, do you love my book, right? So I did it different. I sent it out to a CIA operative friend of mine, military intel guy of mine, a guy who really isn't a big fan of police and military. So I wanted his opinion to see if he still liked the characters, knowing he doesn't like the roles.
Right.
Right. And he gave some great input, which I think, again, will resonate with a wide variety of Americans, and may hopefully endear some of these professions to people so that they can see us beyond the badge or the uniform and see the person that lies behind them, right? So
Awesome.
all this is set against a ridiculous, fast-paced plot, very realistic. I've planned, like, the scope of every operation or every action scene that happened in here is planned out that it plausibly
Right.
could happen or could occur, and is very
Awesome.
current for time. And it really hits at like smaller town America in
Yep.
the sense that we always look at the big cities, and they're always targets, and everyone sees New York, and they see like the LAs or the DCs, and they expect kind of big things to happen there.
Right.
But like,
You don't look at small town America and expect.
and we should.
Right.
And it can happen anywhere. I mean, I know guys in agencies I worked with in various sizes, right? And some of the most intense things that have happened police-wise that can happen have happened in those smaller agencies. But we always think it's going to happen in the big city. So this is kind of a play on that. So
Awesome. Where can people get the book?
Amazon. It's at Amazon right now in both paperback, kind of Kindle ebook format.
The Camel's Back, Brian Christopher Shea. Check it out. I haven't read it yet, but again, I've had a number of buddies of mine, Gerald, for example,
yep.
say you got to read this book. It's spectacular. So, brother, shameless plug. Joe, let's edit that into the bottom there. Amazon. Thanks for
Awesome.
coming on, man. Thanks
Thank
for
you,
sharing.
brother. I appreciate
Your
this.
name goes on the bottle goes on the wall, and you have a home here. So, guys, again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch and to hit that little share button on the bottom of this. Thanks for checking out the book. Go leave them a 5-star review. And, guys, thanks for watching. God bless
Cheers.
America.
America.